If, directed by John Krasinski, stars Ryan Reynolds, John Krasinski, Cailey Fleming, Steve Carell, and many others in an ensemble cast. After discovering she can see everyone's imaginary friends, a girl embarks on a magical adventure to reconnect forgotten ifs with their kids. When I initially watched the trailers for this movie, I felt like I knew what to expect going into it. However, I respect John Krasinski as a filmmaker, so naturally I had to see what this film had to offer. On one hand, it was exactly what I expected going into it, but I left with a few surprises at the same time. This movie mainly features a child actress who is front and center, and lo and behold, I actually thought she gave a pretty good performance here. The whole point of her character is she's supposed to act older than she's supposed to be, as there are events that happened to her when she was younger where she felt it was better to grow up quickly so she wouldn't have to deal with things. And I feel like because of her needing to have this emotional maturity, it adds to her acting to where she puts in a good and believable performance. At the same time, her character doesn't fall into the trope of being a tight ass despite her not wanting to be treated like a kid. There's moments where she embraces the fun things that are going on around her, and it's pretty endearing to see. Essentially, props to both the actress for actually being competent and putting in the work for a good performance, especially near the end, where she has this big emotional scene. As I was watching this, it basically confirmed in my head that she was really good. And also props for Krasinski for knowing how to properly direct a child actor to where they're not annoying and end up with something poor. I can't say too much about Ryan Reynolds in this movie, as whether for better or for worse, he is putting out the same performance in every movie he's in for the past good few years, including this one. Some people like him for this reason, some people are getting tired of it. I think for me personally, it really depends on the type of movie he's in. He's fine here. There's certain things about his character that I can't talk about without giving away spoilers, so I'll leave you to go see the movie to see this aspect for yourself. This movie has an abundance of celebrity voices. Steve Carell plays the main if named Blue, which I thought was pretty interesting because if you grew up in the late 90s and early 2000s and you had a TV channel named Cartoon Network, you will immediately pull parallels with this movie and the TV show Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, since the main imaginary friend in that show was also named Blue. I'm gonna be honest, I really didn't like his character in this movie. A lot of his dialogue was pretty cringe, and half the time he's just making these noises that get really obnoxious from time to time. But I get it, he's the big loud character that kids are going to relate to because they're also loud and annoying. Many of the other celebrity voices have somewhat an equal amount of screen time, and surprisingly I'm not seeing their names all over the marketing for this movie to pull people in. We have people like Bradley Cooper, who from his first line I instantly recognize, Matt Damon, Sam Rockwell, Maya Rudolph, Bill Hader, who I didn't actually recognize because I swear he didn't actually have many lines in the movie at all. I actually think he might have just made audible noises, so it makes sense why I wouldn't have heard him properly. Obviously, having a massive celebrity voice cast doesn't make for an amazing movie, but seeing all these people here is very endearing. Awkwafina is also in the movie, but I swear this has to be the first movie I've seen her in where I wasn't annoyed by her presence, since I think she only had about 3 lines in the whole movie. Obviously, this movie is heavy on the visual effects. What I thought was pretty cool was how they took time to make sure every if was differentiated by their style of animation. There's lots of different animation styles. It reminded me of a movie like Roger Rabbit or that Brendan Fraser Looney Tunes movie, where there was a nice mix of live action and animation blending together there. Another thing that the different styles of animation reminded me of was the TV show The Amazing World of Gumball. That was a show that not only blended live action and CGI well together, but when it came to its animated characters that had loads of different art styles, so that you could differentiate all the different types of characters in that show. Naturally, with them taking this into account and putting in the effort to make all the characters different in this movie, the visual effects actually looked appealing here, which, as I've said before, is something rare nowadays, so it was really appreciated to see. I'm very split in terms of how the story is handled in this movie. The concept of this girl helping these ifs find their kids who had forgotten about them is a good concept for a movie like this. The problem is that besides a quick montage at the end of the movie. We instead spend most of our time focusing on the two main ifs getting their kids back, and a load of other ones get sidelined again until the very end of the movie. It almost makes you feel cheated in a way. You think this is what the movie is going to focus on, but because it's a kids movie, they only really had time to do about two of them. Along with this, it actually takes quite a while for the ifs to come into the movie. I'd say there's a decent 20 to 25 minute stretch before the ifs appear. The opening of this movie instead opts to go for this big emotional pull to try and instantly hook you. However, when this movie is mainly geared towards kids, you'd want to hope if you bring your kids to this movie that they have a decent attention span. But thankfully, when the ifs do enter the movie, they never really go away. There's points where the first and second act of the movie felt a bit repetitive. There's certain things that go somewhere through convenience. There's a moment in the movie where it's alluded to that there's going to be an antagonist in the movie. We never see this person ever again. And while they do have an excuse for this, it felt like that there was no point to have it in the movie at all, because as it goes on, you realize there's no room for an antagonist to be present, so it makes less sense why this moment was in the movie. On top of this, the movie is very predictable, and this could easily be due to its writing being made towards kids. So there's moments where a kid wouldn't get it, but I understand what the movie was going for as soon as these things were introduced. Overall, this wasn't as bad as I expected it to be, but it's nothing incredibly spectacular either. It's very inoffensive. Like, if a kid wanted to watch this, then that's fine. There's so many more brain-rotting family films they could go for, but this one is still decent. A lot of things do happen out of coincidence, and while it's semi-explained near the end of the movie, it feels tacked on as an excuse to easily explain things. And I wouldn't call it lazy writing by any means, but it did feel like it was looking for an easier way to explain the whole movie pretty quickly. I'm giving If 3 stars. It's really visually appealing and has some pretty fun, whimsical moments, but it's also slow in some other parts too, which some younger kids may not be fond of. But it's a very safe movie that doesn't want to be insanely challenging, but I don't think this is a bad thing here. It's very serviceable and overall just a fine time. I'd recommend checking it out for yourself to see if you would like it less or more.